Is the driver's license for a hybrid vehicle the same for a regular vehicle? We're going to answer that question and take a look at Philippine driver's license restriction codes today. What's up? You're watching Tito Talks non-life insurance discussions once again with your favorite Tito Miguel, who loves to make non-life insurance discussions easier to understand for both agents and clients. Magandang Friday to everyone. Happy holidays to you. The Christmas season has now started, and I hope you are all safe and comfortable in your own homes, enjoying another episode of Tito Talks. And for today, we're going to be talking about a very interesting topic, especially popular during this season because this is the time that usually people get vehicles as presents. Now, in line with getting vehicles as presents, it's not enough to get your vehicle registered. It's also important that you get a driver's license to accommodate that vehicle. Of course, if a vehicle is allowed to operate on Philippine roads, drivers are also required to get permission from the government before they can step behind the wheel. And with that being said, we're going to answer our question, which I left you guys last week. Is a license for a hybrid vehicle, meaning electric and gas, the same as a regular vehicle? And the answer to that question is yes, depending on certain factors. I bet you didn't see I bet you didn't see that one coming, right? Now, before we get into driver's restriction codes, which we mentioned in the intro, it's important to know that there are different types of licenses here in the Philippines. As with most other countries, you've got your professional, non-professional, and your student license owners. Student license owners are allowed to drive vehicles only on the condition that there is a fully licensed driver in the passenger seat next to them as they operate the vehicle. On the other hand, non-professional driver's license owners or driver's licenses are meant for those people who use the vehicle for personal purposes and not for livelihood purposes. Which brings us to the final one. Professional driver's licenses are meant for people or drivers who actually make a living off of this driving skill. These people would usually be cab drivers, taxi drivers, Grab drivers, even truck drivers, and delivery van drivers. These people depend on their driving skill for their living. Therefore, a professional driver's license is required for them. Meaning to say, even if you're driving a hybrid or a gas-powered car, depending on your usage, you're going to need either a professional or non-professional license. Not depending on the type of vehicle, but depending on your usage. But that's not enough. On top of finding the proper license type to apply for, it's also important that you know what restriction codes your license should allow you to drive. For starters, restriction codes are various numbers. Well, they started off as numbers, but we'll get to that in a while. Restriction codes are indicators on your license which limit the type of vehicle this license allows the person to drive. So it's licenses here in the Philippines don't work as a one-way ticket for all types of vehicles. Meaning to say, if you have one license, just a license, it doesn't mean you can drive anything you want. Each license is different from the other based on the restriction codes they have. Various restriction codes have certain limitations as to what kinds of vehicles you are allowed to drive as a license holder. Now, with that being said, there are two sets of driver's license restriction codes that are already active out now in today's market in the Philippines. Let's start with the one we've gotten used to. The sets of codes that we've gotten used to already and the ones that have been implemented by the LTO for the longest time range from 1 to 8. So your restriction codes are numbered, and they're numbered 1 to 8. Each number represents a specific type or specific classification of vehicle that the license is allowed to drive. You can have more than one restriction code on your license, which will increase the number of vehicles that the license allows you to drive. Take note though, you can also apply for additional restriction codes to your already existing licenses. With that being said, let's take a look at some of these codes then. Shall we? Now, if you're driving anything on two wheels or a tricycle, you're stuck with restriction code number 1, and that should keep you stuck on the motorcycle lane. That means if you're driving a motorcycle or tricycle, you're always going to get restriction code number 1. Restriction codes 2 and 4 allow you to operate vehicles underneath 4,500 kilograms gross vehicle weight. That doesn't mean the only weight of the vehicle, but that also includes the weight of everyone inside the car, including whatever luggage or contents you may have in the trunk of your car. Now, the difference between restriction codes 2 and 4 is that restriction code 2 allows you to drive both automatic and manual transmission vehicles, while restriction code 4 is only restricted to automatic type vehicles, both of which are all underneath 4,500 kilograms. If you're new to this, manual transmission vehicles are also known as stick shifts, wherein you see that stick shaft in the middle of your driver's panel, wherein you would have to manipulate that stick to shift into different gears, adjusting the vehicle speed. Automatic transmissions don't have that, as they already adapt to the driving style and adjust speeds accordingly. Now, restriction codes 3 and 5, however, they take care of vehicles above 4,500 kilograms gross vehicle weight. This is where you start dealing with your trucks, your minivans, your large vans, which carry a lot of cargo, as indicated by going beyond 4,500 kilograms. However, they are to be treated differently from restriction codes 6 to 8. Now, you can operate specific types of trucks under restriction codes 3 and 5, but not every type of truck. Usually, the trucks that you can operate under restriction codes 3 and 5 do not have pivot joints, which are actually part of what are allowed under restriction code 6 to 8. Now, the pivot joint is a very important indicator or a very important telling point of a truck, which will dictate what type of license you get or what type of restriction code you get on your license. Restriction codes 3 and 5 allow you to drive trucks without pivot joints. However, 6 to 8 allow you to get trucks or drive trucks with pivot joints. Now, pivot joints are a very interesting mechanism in trucks, as they actually provide, as the name implies, a pivotal joint on your truck, which allows you to create sharper turns with the truck as you make those sharp corners. Trucks without a pivot joint, when they make a turn, the whole truck makes a turn as well. So as you can see, pivot joints are very, very useful for really, really, really large trucks, especially trucks with trailer sections that you still have to attach to the back of the truck. So there you have it, 1 to 8, all classified properly. But apparently, some new restriction codes have been floating around with licenses that have been renewed past July of 2020 in the Philippines. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Now, sometime a little past July, the Land Transportation Office has been issuing out different looking licenses with a different set of restriction codes, which they no longer call restriction codes, but rather driver's license codes. And instead of using numbers, they're now using a combination of letters and numbers. Also, instead of having the usual 8 restriction codes, you're now looking at 9 restriction codes. A, A1, B, B1, B2, C, D, BE, and CE. Now, this may sound a little bit more confusing at first because we've already become used to the usual restriction codes. However, this new set of restriction codes allows the Land Transportation Office to be more specific about the type of vehicles a particular license is supposed to operate. Now, for example, in the past section, we talked about section code 1 or restriction code 1, which allows you to drive motorcycles and tricycles. Both of them have one restriction code, which is restriction code 1. However, with the new system, you no longer have one restriction code for motorcycles and tricycles. They're now divided into 2, A for motorcycles and A1 for tricycles. Further than that, it goes a little bit more deeper because you have some subcodes for the various types of tricycles and motorcycles available out there. So as you can see, things become more specific with the new system, as well as the same thing can be said with the different types of vehicles and the weight limitations. You'll notice with the new sets of codes, we no longer use the 4,500 limitation. Now we use 5,000 kilograms limitation to distinguish between your regular SUVs and sedans that have 8 to 9 seaters to mini trucks and minivans depending on the type of cargo that they provide. And you'll also be interested to know there are also restriction codes, or there is also a restriction code meant entirely for buses, trailers, and of course, let's not forget, you also have your code for articulated trucks or articulated vehicles. If I failed to mention earlier, vehicles or trucks with pivot joints are not called vehicles with pivot joints. They're actually called articulated vehicles. So it makes it sound a lot more posh and classy, doesn't it? An articulated vehicle. And this one, I'd like to make sure that this goes right in theme of the Christmas season right now. Can I buy insurance as a Christmas gift for my friends, family, and relatives? Really interesting question, right? Can I buy insurance for someone else who I'm not related to? My friends, my girlfriend, your significant other, your live-in partner. Can you buy non-life insurance for other people? Let me know what you feel. Let me know what you think in the comments. And if you find this type of content relevant and useful, please consider subscribing to the channel and allow us to grow and reach more agents and people. Once again, thank you so much for watching. This has been your favorite Tito Miguel, always saying, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.